let's talk about Kotaku again, because we're going to have to. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like talking about Kotaku, and like, I get it. I totally get it, guys. But the problem is, though, stuff keeps happening with Kotaku, and we got to talk about this. So recently, within the last day, at the time I'm recording this, so yesterday, this came out. The Kotaku editor-in-chief resigned from Kotaku, straight up, like plain as day. This came out, this was announced by her on social media, so I'll go through a little bit of the story. This is originally, I saw this on Aftermath. This was the first place that I saw it there, but then a bunch of other places, including GamesIndustry.biz, started, reporting on it after this came out. So, Jen Glennon, okay, who was the editor-in-chief at Kotaku, after Patricia Hernandez was fired back in August, she took over for Patricia. She recently sent in a letter of resignation, okay, and she gave it to everybody. She let everybody know that she was resigning from Kotaku. She comes out in the letter and goes, after careful... oh my God. See, I don't want to choke with this. After careful consideration, I have concluded that the current management structure and decision-making processes at Geo Media are not aligned with my values and goals for Kotaku. Okay, I firmly believe that the decision to invert Kotaku's editorial strategy to deprioritize news in favor of guides is fundamentally misguided given the current infrastructure of the site. And it goes on to say more stuff. But basically, the main gist of this is that Geo Media, the parent company of Kotaku, they own Kotaku and many of their other sister websites. They wanted the people that are working there now, they're like 7 or so writers that do all the news and everything else with Kotaku. They want them to pivot to making guides. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. First off, a lot of people were not happy about that. As you could tell, the editor-in-chief resigned over this because Kotaku has been known to do news stuff. They've been one of the places for years that have been breaking news and have been doing other stuff. Really not because of the website itself, really because of individuals like Jason Schreier, Steve Totillo, Brian Crescente. A lot of those people that were at Kotaku were helped build Kotaku. Those were the people breaking stories. This is why Kotaku was known for this, okay? But the website itself is not really for that. It's really changed up over the last, 7-10 years, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know how long Kotaku's been around, but I know they've been around for a while. And they were known for this, but they've changed for many different reasons in many different ways, right? And what's unfortunate about this is that it's been for the worse. For, again, a number of reasons. We've talked about on this podcast many different times that Kotaku articles have gone up and have said many different things that people have really had an issue with, okay? Real big problems with, like some of their headlines, some of their op-eds, some of the people that work over there spouting whatever opinions. There's been many different things that have become, really hotbeds of debate and discussion and arguments about Kotaku, right? And here's the thing. I understand that this is frustrating to change up the website, from what never was to what their parent company wants them to do, which is to make guides. They say in the article there that they wanted to mandate them that per week they wanted 50 guides on the website in order to get traffic and SEO moving for them. The reason why this is the case and why Geo Media wants to put so much emphasis on this is because websites all over the place have been wanting to do guides to SEO farm. That's what gets the traffic. That's what gets the hits. That's what brings in a lot of ad revenue. That's what gets things pushed out in the Google algorithm, on different media websites. This is what helps out, keep the lights on at various outlets. And while I understand that the writers over there, including the editor-in-chief, have a big problem with that, they're your parent company. They're your bosses. There's a reason why they're saying that. And the reason why they're saying that and why they feel the need to do this is because of all the stuff that has happened at Kotaku up to this point. We literally talked about, not that long ago, their big problem with Nintendo. If you guys don't remember this happened a couple months ago, if not a little bit longer. They had the issue where they were blacklisted by Nintendo. They had a problem where they were talking about the stuff with emulators and piracy for other games. Kotaku is the outlet that published a story telling people about going to pirate the new Legend of Zelda game. Why do you think Nintendo was so pissed at them? We talked about that on this podcast. In addition to that, there's been many other times where various different publishers and developers don't like Kotaku. They don't want to interact with them because it's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be an issue. And the way that Kotaku and specifically some of their writers that are over there now, talk down to their audience and make statements about if you really want to, again, I can't even really say it on here, but it's out there. Go look at some of the stuff that was put out there by some of these Kotaku writers. Look at it. I don't even need to say anything. And you mean to tell me, people are not going to have a problem with that? let alone anything else that's come up that people have had issues with over the last couple of years. I mean, look at all this stuff. All this news came out, right? A lot of people had many different opinions about it and stuff. Like, look, even Legacy Killer, I know he's been talking about this for the longest time. You know, there's been many other people in the industry, Nick Calidera, who used to be at The Escapist, talking about all this stuff. You know, a lot of people aren't really showing a lot of empathy to Kotaku for a variety of different reasons. But the reason why we've gotten to this point and why things seem so bad and seem so, tumultuous? Oh my God, I can't even talk. Excuse me. Tumultuous right now for Kotaku is because of everything else that has led up to this. You know, all the stuff that I mentioned, all the stuff that people are pointing to right now is the reason why it's gotten to this point and why probably Geo Media, like their bosses, feel the need to really change things up. If there's another thing that's an aspect to this that I actually saw Neon from CFTV talk about this recently, right? That I also think is a big part of their decision with Kotaku, with Geo Media specifically. If you remember not that long ago, there was a big article at Deadspin that got them in really big trouble, the website, where they ended up laying off a bunch of people. That was about this young kid that was at a Chiefs game, that he was like wearing the different paint and stuff. And they tried to say that he was doing blackface when he really wasn't. This is a young kid, right? They did this whole article basically slandering this kid's name when he's been to multiple games dressed as that because he's a football fan, you know, dressing up in the Chiefs colors. It was one side, I think, was black and then the other side was red or something like that. It was like multiple colors that he wears for the actual team's colors. And it was a young kid that wearing the whole Native American kind of like, you know, little kind of like headpiece and a whole bunch of other stuff. Known for doing this for a long time. But they wrote this article saying this about this kid and really tried to slander his name. So I believe it was the parents and a whole bunch of other people got upset about this. And they ended up like getting Deadspin into some really big legal trouble. And I feel like in order to avoid another situation like that, because of like the very volatile, very hostile type of opinions that get spouted out there by some of these writers that work at some of these websites, you know, I feel like with Geo Media, trying to get them to get away from news and focus a little bit more on guides, not only is to help keep the lights on, but also to prevent any sort of like lawsuit and other like thing that might come up. Because I think this is a big deal to them where they don't want to get into legal trouble and then cause even more problems for a website that is probably struggling also to bring in funds for that actual company. Again, I don't know the specifics of it. I don't know the inner workings of Kotaku, let alone the inner workings of Geo Media. But that seems to be something that lines up because Deadspin is another website that's owned by Geo Media. And they just got sold after all that. They just got sold to another company. So when Neon bringing that up, it kind of makes sense to me because it's like, okay, hold on. If I was the owner of a website, okay, if I didn't work there, if I wasn't into editorial, if I was a business person only caring about numbers and all this stuff, and I see all these things happening with my website that I own, and people have this perception of it, and I saw this other thing happen to another website that I own as well, if I'm going to really kind of take charge and like try to avoid issues like that and make things better and turn it around, obviously I'm going to take actions that prevent that, getting away from news itself, while also focusing on something that is proven at other outlets to be bringing in money and bringing in relevance. The reason why companies like guides so much is because they really do a lot of good stuff for SEO. Look at IGN. IGN makes the majority of its money and the majority of its traffic from guides. That's why they put so much emphasis on guides. This has been a thing for a long time now. This is nothing new. Everybody knows this, especially if you're in the industry, especially if you work on guides. I've worked on guides myself at IGN. I've done stuff with the wiki guides. I've also worked on guides at .esports and many other different places. There's a reason why these websites are doing that, and especially now within the last few years where things have been getting much harder for everybody at these outlets. It's been a big deal because a lot of people feel like, yo, we need to do something about this in order to kind of, you know, make sure that we keep our traffic moving, and we also make sure that we're in the like higher rankings for different places like Google, different like aggregate websites. You know, doing stuff like that is important. And when you start to see a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustration, not just from the writers, but from everybody else about all this stuff, there's a reason for that. It's really, you know, it's really disheartening to see because I feel like, again, all this stuff could have really been avoided. All this stuff could have really been kind of prevented from happening. I don't think that if Kotaku was in a good place right now, if Kotaku was actually in good standing and their editorials and their news were really doing as good as some of these writers make it out to be, Geo Media wouldn't be wanting to pivot so badly. They wouldn't want to be actually like get to a point where they actually change up the entire strategy that the website was founded upon. when it comes to news and stuff. I've seen a lot of writers who are over there right now complaining about this and making that same point. But it's like, hold on a second. Have you seen how well other websites have been doing with, with guides? Have you seen like what other people have been saying about guides, what they've been doing for other outlets like your competition, like IGN, like Polygon, like The Verge, like GameSpot? GameSpot, again, look at their section. They're kind of like the opposite of IGN as far as being the two sides of the same coin. They also do a lot of guides and a lot of videos too. Kotaku does videos as well, and they have a YouTube channel, but it's not to the same extent that IGN, GameSpot, and some of these other outlets do. I mean, you have to pivot. You have to change things up in order to make sure that you're doing well. If you're not doing well, you obviously need to make a change. You obviously need to do things differently. And I feel like the anger and the frustration and like the back and forth from not only the writers, but also some of the people that really care about these websites and all this other stuff seem to fundamentally misunderstand why this is all happening, or at least why we've gotten to this point, why it's happening. And it's a shame because, again, I don't mind Kotaku. I've been open for years that I've applied to places like Kotaku. I've wanted to get a job in the industry working for a place like either like Kotaku, like IGN, like GameSpot. Why? Because I love writing about it and I love talking about games. I could do all the stuff that people at Kotaku have done and probably better in some ways. That's not to say that to be arrogant. That's just the truth. There's a lot of people who also feel that way, that want to be a part of this industry. Whether you love them or hate them, Kotaku as an outlet, as a website, has been part of this industry for a very long time. So to see stuff like this happening and to see like such of like, this weird kind of like lull state that some of the people over there seem to be in about this, it's shameful. It sucks to see. I don't want people to lose their jobs, but the reason why they're in such dire straits is because of everything else that's happened beforehand. The problems with arguing with your audience, like talking down to your audience, I think is one of the worst things you could do. I've said this many times on all the times that we've spoken about Kotaku itself, whenever there was a story that popped up about them. With even the stuff that happened recently with some of their articles, which I won't mention, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. The way that some of those writers are talking to the people reacting to them, to their own readers, their own audience members. Like, that's not the best way to approach this. There's so many, like multiple different ways you could have gone about this to actually change it up. Now, in all fairness, to be real about all this, okay, because we have to talk about the flip side of it, right? While guides are definitely something that the writers shouldn't be kind of like all up in arms about when it comes to doing content to really kind of make things better. I will say though, as someone who has written guides, long form and short form guides, 50 guides a week is way too much. 50 guides a week is a little bit ridiculous. And the reason why I say it's a little bit ridiculous is because it takes a long time to make a guide. Even a short guide, like a short form guide, I've done a bunch of them. When I was at Esports, right, I was doing guides for Mortal Kombat. And even those guides for like basic stuff takes a time. Like, you can't, I would be more lenient with a lot of the stuff that Geo Media is demanding or kind of like mandating on Kotaku to really do. If it was like 20 to 25 guides a week, and 25 is really pushing it. So like half that amount, because I know how long it takes to do guides. Even if you get someone to do like 5 guides a day, which is a lot, right? If you had one person doing just guides, but they were doing 5 guides a day across multiple different games, it doesn't have to be about the same game, right? It could be about multiple different games. That is still a lot. I think that if you had it where I used to do like maybe 1 to 2 guides a day, if I was doing multiple guides, that's a lot in of itself. But still, if you have like 8 hours that you're working, like you could probably figure it out and try to make things work. But 50 guides a week is a lot, and it's a lot of stuff to get done. And I understand the frustration for some of those writers over there where if they're just doing nothing but news, if they've been doing news for years and have been doing it at Kotaku for a long time, I get it. It sucks, and it's annoying to see something like that, and it feels like the people that are your bosses don't understand why you're there. I get it, okay? But again, I go back to the reason why we're in this point to begin with. We're in this spot to begin with is because of all the stuff that has happened with Kotaku beforehand. All the articles, all the backlash, and all the different kind of back and forths and arguments and perception of that website. That's the reason why Geo Media feels like they got to change things up. There could be other things, like I said before. I don't know the inner workings of them overall, but that, to me, on the outside looking in, seeing all this stuff play out is probably why they're actually mandating this stuff. And it's going to suck to see what happens next, because a lot of people right now, a lot of different places, I'm not talking about the bigots that are like just trying to stir the pot. I'm talking about people who have been looking at this stuff for a while, coming out and saying like, look, this doesn't look good for Kotaku. This looks like there's either some stuff where they're trying to push people out, or this is like right before they're either going to sell the website or they're going to like lay off a bunch of people. That sucks to hear. And if that's the case, that's coming down the line, I don't think everybody is prepared for it, regardless of how you feel about it. It's a shame to see stuff like this happen, but you know, how can one feel a lot of empathy when there's been a bunch of other like lead steps and breadcrumbs that have led up to this? You know, I leave that up to all of you to decide. I think it's a very crappy conversation to have. I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. I want everybody to land on their feet. I want everybody to be okay. But, you know, what am I going to say? You know, what can anybody say at this point with Kotaku? We'll see what happens over the next couple months, but it is what it is by this point. So those are my thoughts on everything that's happened with Kotaku right now with their editor-in-chief leaving. Again, the second editor-in-chief to leave since Steven Totilo. Since Steven Totilo, because Patricia Hernandez was fired straight up, okay? When Geo Media felt the need to fire them, like, you got to look at it as like, okay, it can't all be Geo Media at that point. It can't be all Geo Media that's taking the blame for this. As much as blame that they get from a lot of people, there's got to be other stuff that's going on over here. We got to see the full picture. But it's the second editor-in-chief that they've lost with this. There's a lot of problems all over the place, but those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know some of your thoughts about this down below in the comments section. Do you agree or disagree with me? What's going on? What do you feel like is the main reason why Geo Media felt the need to change this up for Kotaku? Do you think Kotaku is still going to be around in the next few years? You know, who knows at this point, but tell me your thoughts about it down below in the comments section.